All right, everyone. We start off today, of course, with the Trump arraignment. He has pled not guilty to the 4 new charges he's been indicted on as part of Jack Smith's witch hunt. Of course, there's also the separate Alvin Bragg witch hunt and an upcoming likely witch hunt from Georgia. They'll probably indict him there, too. I would like to point out one thing, because the fact that he pled not guilty isn't really newsworthy because it was a foregone conclusion he's going to plead not guilty. Because he's just going to do that. He intends to play this out in court. It'll be a lengthy process. I have a feeling that they're mainly trying to affect the GOP primary. So what they're trying to do is get an early conviction on at least some of the charges. Maybe Bragg's case moves forward quicker. Maybe Smith's, maybe the Georgia case, we're not exactly sure. Dates are malleable within the legal system, you will know. Anyway, I have a feeling that that's their primary goal. The primary goal is the primaries. They're so afraid of Trump that they want to shove him aside. They're hoping that enough Republicans will abandon him if he's convicted of something. They'll say, well, indictment was one thing, but conviction is another, and so, we can't be on the Trump train anymore. We'll lose. I would point out a few things. First, I would vote for Trump anyway. Doesn't matter whether he wins or loses, because with anyone else you lose by default. If you're choosing between two unipartyists, you have like a 2004 election scenario. Bush versus Kerry. Wow, what a choice. It's amazing. It's incredible. Well, no, they're basically the same. Obama v. Romney. We've seen Romney certainly show his true colors since that election, by the way, as Senator Romney. Not that he hadn't already as Governor Romney. With Romney care. Very interesting. Very conservative individual. I already saw that. There was no real choice in the election, though. I mean, you might as well have voted for Mickey Mouse. I wrote in Ron Paul for a reason. I didn't really care if Obama was reelected if the alternative is just as bad. It's the same thing. With most of the candidates that have viability, at least, within the GOP field, like Nikki Haley, in the absence of Trump, let's say Crooks or something, I'm not going to vote for DeSantis. He's tarnished himself too much and been consistently going more and more sort of poking the bear with populism. Got leaked memos from his campaign saying, well, after the primary is over, if you're nominated, you just swing back to the center. Dude, Trump is like the only candidate in modern history to be nominated and not do that and actually hold to his guns. Maybe Vivek Ramaswamy, but again, his comments about the TPP turned me off. Looking at the rest of the field, I see people who can't win the primary or the general election. And I see unipartyists. I see people who would very quickly become like Mitt Romney or like George Bush. I'm not interested in voting for them. So point number one is that you might as well stand with Trump because unless Rand Paul or somebody gets in the race in the absence of Trump, like let's say things completely fall apart, numerous states ban him from the ballot, it's quite self-evidently clear that he's not going to be going anywhere but house arrest at the Mar-a-Lago, unless somebody novel enters the field, it's not really worth voting GOP at all. I'd rather write in Donald Trump. That being said, there's another point to make. I've seen some people proclaiming lately, over the last few days, that the Uniparty wouldn't have gone after Trump if he hadn't run. So if he had just said, you know what, I had a good presidency, I refuse to admit that I lost, but I'm not going to run again because the system is rigged, or I'm not going to run again because it's too much hassle. I'm not going to run again because I want more time with my family, or hey, I just literally want to go golfing. I'm divesting a bunch of properties, buying a little island and going golfing. Don't worry, it won't be like Epstein's Island. I think they would have charged him anyway, because the whole point of this is part of a shock and terrorism campaign by the Uniparty against populists. You see what they're doing with the J6 defendants, for example. A considerable number of people have been held without trial now for several years, often on non-violent charges. In some cases, not even felonious ones. They are effectively being tortured and held up before the public view to say, don't do it again. They would have charged Trump, in my opinion, anyway. Not because of the even-handedness of law. Nobody's above the law, so we're not going to cut him any slack just because he stood down. No. That's not the point. And they're unhappy that he's running. They would have rather him stood down, trust me. They are still afraid of him, and there is still a good chance that he wins re-election. Where that takes us in the sense of a constitutional crisis and overall social chaos remains to be seen. The 24 election will be the messiest election in U.S. history. bar none. It will be messier than 2020. It will be more weird and wonky than 2016. It'll be worse than the corrupt elections we had in the wake of the Civil War. It'll be worse than the crazy electioneering that you had back in the Gilded Age. That being said, they would have charged him anyway, because they want to make an example of him. They want to make an example to other upstart would-be politicians. If you step out of line, and instead of just making vague promises and actually attempt to carry through with them, if you oppose globalistic trade deals, if you want some degree of national sovereignty, and you don't want to start the wars that we tell you to start, then you're going to be treated the same way. What we've got, ironically, by the Uniparty is an attempt to nullify the office of the presidency. Right now, there is a vegetable puppet, a steward, an asterisk administration sitting in the White House. They just do what they're told. And that's the other thing. They're willing to defend their puppet Joe Biden because he's such an empty suit. They don't have to worry about him pushing back against their warmongering and shit like that. If they say bomb Iran, Biden will sign the paper next day. They're willing to defend him, which is why, with each of these indictments, they so coincidentally follow right after news with regards to Joe Biden's own personal legal problems. Namely, spying on everyone, censoring everyone, doing dirty business deals that we have more and more proof he was directly involved in, lying to the public knowingly, and now we know that he did. We know that he met with people he said he never met with. We know he did discuss business with his son. We know he discussed things, maybe of a non-business nature, but it doesn't matter, with people that he claims never to have held a conversation with in the first place. Now, all roads lead to Hunter Biden, according to the legacy media. Well, Biden didn't do anything wrong. It was his son peddling that influence. It was an illusion, basically, the illusion of access they're using. That's their buzz term for what happened. That's false. We all know that that's false. Well, we may or may not get proof of that falsehood in the future. But every time that something goes wrong for Biden, a new Trump indictment drops. Wow. By the way, it's not helping Joe in the polls. His disapproval rating is now edging up towards 55%. He's actually cracked through his long-term soft ceiling of disapproval. He's close to that margin for his approval going down, by the way. They're afraid of Donald Trump. Biden is useful for them. They would have charged him anyway, in my opinion. So that line doesn't really matter. I suspect in the end that they're simply front-loading a shit ton of charges to provide the illusion that he must have done something wrong and to scare MAGA voters basically into thinking he's inevitably going to get convicted. Now, in the end, they probably do convict Trump on numerous charges. Probably most of them fall through, especially Bragg's artificially upgraded charges. Those are, I think, the most easily explained away. They'll probably try to then force Trump into cutting a plea deal. You stand down, and we won't do anything about it. We'll give you a suspended sentence, or you get to stay at the Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, don't worry, we're not going to take your passport or anything. Everyone knows who you are anyway. You're not really a flight risk, although he has his own private jets. Several of them, I think. Not worried about that bullshit. You're former president. We can't put you in a jail cell, so we're going to fine you or something. Trump has to go do 1,000 hours of community service. By the way, that might actually rankle liberal voters more than it would rankle conservatives. It would rankle them because they want to throw the book at Trump. That's the other possibility. They could do that. They could effectively, they could sentence him to 100,000 years in prison on the current level of felony charges. He is facing several life sentences, and some of these charges do carry the death penalty potentially. They are trying to terrorize the populists of the public because they're terrified that the spirit of 2016 will roar back to life. Things will go well. They will be unable to collapse the system while Trump is president if he's reelected, and that they will fail, that globalism will begin to unravel. And then they have to work for another few decades to catch up. They have to play catch-up because you get a soft reset to the early 80s. It takes time to boil a frog. They're afraid of Trump turning the temperature down. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid that Trump, in another term, depending on the political and economic circumstances, might be able to buy us enough breathing room so that I'm likely dead before the true bad times of re-globalism happen. Because that's what they're moving towards. It's worldwide slavery, worldwide corruption. That's fundamentally what they want. That's about all. Peace out.